Merkaba by Drunvalo. The angels guided me for over 30 years in the art of understanding and living within the human light body, the Mer-Ka-Ba. When I wrote my first 2 books, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life, my knowledge of the Mer-Ka-Ba was limited to the human mind as I now comprehend it. I had no idea that there was more. The sacred geometry of the Merkaba seemed so complete, but over the last decade or so, I have been having experiences, guided by the same angels, that have clearly indicated my limits were about to be expanded. One day, a few years ago, as I meditated within the Merkaba, I found myself in a world that I could not understand. I was inside a cave made of rock. It was as real as anything I had ever seen in the real world. If I'd visited this cave only once, or even a few times, I would probably have left it and continued. In the meditational direction I seemed to be following, with the path of the Merkaba. But that's not what happened. Instead, as events unfolded, I began to find myself in this rock cave 2 or 3 times a week. For years, I really had no clue as to what this meant or why it was happening. But slowly, very slowly, it began to dawn on me where I was. I was inside my own heart. The inside of this cave, it seemed, had not been made by nature. It was clear that this cave was constructed by human, or, at least, conscious hands. There were images of people on the walls, steps leading down into another layer, and fields of light that would not allow me to pass or view them. And, most intriguing, there was a small round ring of white silica sand that felt completely different from any other place in this cave. At one point in my enlightenment about the heart, I was asked by several unique sources to teach this experience. And as I was exposed to teaching over 4,000 students, and listening to over 2,000 of them speak of their intimate experiences within their own hearts, I began to realize the nature of the human heart. Its nature was one of dreaming and images, and most centrally, creating that which is manifested in the outer world. Claudette Melchizedek. The Blue School Teaching. Click to visit. Recently, I have experienced how the heart and the mind, the toroidal fields of the Merkabarium, and the toroidal fields of the heart can interconnect in such a way as to give the life direction back to the heart. As long as mind and ego control the direction of creating, there will always be problems in the outer world, for the ego thinks only of itself and lives in duality. But when the heart is in control, everything comes back into balance, for the heart feels and knows only the oneness of life. So to me, this is what this issue of the spirit of Maat is about, returning the heart into the affairs of the world. Even though the ego has been necessary during the last 13,000 years, it is time for it to retreat back once again to being simply a part of potential. The ego is not needed anymore. The heart knows exactly the timing and the way. If you read this issue only with your mind, whatever conclusions you come to about the information will not be truth. For meaning within the heart is not accessible to the logic of the brain. If you can read with your heart, only then will you understand. It is your choice, as it always has been, in love and service. Drunvalo. History has talked about the Merkaba mostly as the vehicle that allows a person to ascend, or descend into the higher or lower worlds. But actually the Mer-Ka-Ba is much more than just a vehicle of ascension. It can be, really, anything, since it is the primal pattern that created all things and all universes, both visible and invisible. See the ancient secret of the flower of life, volumes I and II. In the Bible there is reference to Ezekiel and the wheels by which Ezekiel ascended into heaven. This was the Merkaba. In the Torah, there is reference to the Merkaba, as it is spelled in Hebrew, which has two different meanings. One meaning is chariot, which is a vehicle. The other is the throne of God. When the two definitions are combined, the true meaning comes to life. In ancient Egypt, this primal pattern was called the Mer-Ka-Ba. It was actually 3 words, not one. Mer meant a kind of light that rotated within itself. Ka meant spirit, in this case referring to the human spirit, and barium meant the human body, though it also could mean the concept of reality that spirit holds. And so the entire word in ancient Egypt referred to a rotating light that would take the spirit and the body from one world into another. I once spent a couple of hours with Credo Mutwa, the spiritual leader of the Zulu tribe in Africa. He explained to me that Merkaba, one word, was a Zulu word meaning a space-time dimension vehicle. He told me that according to Zulu legend his entire tribe had come from another dimension here to Earth using the Merkaba. In the modern world there are teachers worldwide, and I am one of them, who are helping people remember the Merkaba. Thus begin a process in consciousness that will eventually translate us from the third dimensional world into the next higher one through what is being called ascension. Ascension involves a process where the human body is transformed in light and translated by an incredible birth into a new world. It is achieved through a meditation that requires the mind, heart, body, and spirit to integrate in one pattern of light and transcend the human limitations of this reality. This concept of the Merkaba as an ascension vehicle is not new. It is very, very old. What actually is the Merkaba? Technically, it is an electromagnetic field, sitting at about 4 degrees Kelvin, found primarily within the microwave range, at least in the 3rd dimension, that is entirely geometric in nature. Specifically, the geometry used is called sacred geometry, as this particular geometry is found in the creation patterns of all things in creation. The Merkaba field is extremely complex, involving the 5 platonic solids and other sacred polyhedrons. It is believed to extend through all possible dimensional and parallel universes, and can possibly change its nature from electromagnetic to whatever is appropriate. The blueprint of the Merkaba is found throughout nature, such as in this photo of a galaxy. One of the functions of the Merkaba, as we said, is to act as the vehicle to take the spirit and the body into the next world. However, this function, and most of the other possibilities, is impossible to obtain until something changes within the person. The Mer-Ka-Ba is situated around the human body like a 3-dimensional geometric web that is dormant and non-functional, waiting for the right moment. When the spirit that inhabits the body remembers that it is there and begins to change certain aspects of itself, an incredible transformation begins to grow. It was believed in ancient times, and even written about by the Hebrews, that the Merkaba could be turned on by certain principles in meditation. This involves breathing changes and mind, heart, and body changes that alter the way a person perceives the reality. From my perspective, it is the beginning of enlightenment. And yet it is clear that the Merkaba can also be activated, as the New Agers say, by other methods beside the male style instructions, using the breathing changes mentioned above. It can also become functional through methods that are purely female, through the true living of qualities such as love, faith, trust, truth, and compassion. The Merkaba can spontaneously become alive. In other words, very pure human character can translate into a living Merkaba field around the person, even if that person doesn't initially know it is there. And yes, absolutely, the Merkaba is alive. It is a living field, not a purely mechanical field of energy. Because it is a living field, it responds to human thought and feeling, which is the way to connect to the field. So the computer that guides the Merkaba is the human mind and heart. The possibilities are endless. At a certain and specific moment, not necessarily in this lifetime, a person's Merkaba field can become alive. When this happens, an electromagnetic change occurs, which results in a disk of energy that comes out from a tiny plate near the base of the spine, and quickly expands to about 27 to 30 feet in radius around the body. This disk can easily be perceived by scientific means, and if the United States Air Force is correct, it can be put up on their computer screens via satellite. In other words, the military can see people who activate their Merkabas and watch as they move around the surface of the earth. Since the number of people who have done this is now in the millions, it is a fairly common sight now. It is the enormous magnetic burst that results from the disk expanding that brings attention to itself. This can easily be made invisible by people who activate their Merkabas, if they so desire. The knowledge of the Merkaba is well known by most of the more powerful governments of the world. I am certain that our government used the Merkaba in the 1943 Philadelphia experiment and the 1983 Montauk experiments, in their mind control experiments, and dimensional explorations, and in controlling weather. And I am equally certain that Russia is using the Merkaba in their spy programs and defense systems. But regardless of government experimentation, Mother Earth, the human race, And we as individuals can profit from this understanding and knowledge. The remembering of the Mer-Ka-Ba is unfolding all over the world. From my point of view, this unfoldment is all part of the evolving cosmic DNA. The Merkaba will be remembered now, because this is the time to remember. Yes, I believe, as did almost all the ancient civilizations, that there are specific moments in the history of mankind where great jumps in human understanding take place, as in the ancient Sumerian, Egyptian, and Indus Valley civilizations. I truly feel that we have arrived at another one of these grand moments of human history where brilliant light expands around the world, and another huge leap in human consciousness appears. And my friends, I truly believe, from my own personal experience, that the Merkaba is a doorway, or a dimensional window into a higher level of consciousness, that could be the catalyst for this great change called ascension. So, to close, I will say again, your character is the key to your ascension. Regardless of who you are at this moment, good or bad, you can change your character. Like losing weight, it is completely within your control if you focus. In changing yourself, your Merkaba can become alive, and once it is alive, everything is possible. And here, Merkaba depicted in action. Footnotes, Ezekiel 1:4, and I looked, and, behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof as the color of amber, out of the midst of 1:16. The appearance of the wheels, and their work, was like unto the color of a beryl, and they four had one likeness. And their appearance and their work, was as it were a wheel in the middle of a wheel. 1:19. And when the living creatures went, the wheels went by them. And when the living creatures were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up. N20. Whithersoever the Spirit was to go, they went, thither was their spirit to go, and the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. 1:21. When those went, these went, and when those stood, these stood, and when those were lifted up from the earth, the wheels were lifted up over against them, for the spirit of the living creature was in the wheels. 1:23. And under the firmament were their wings straight, the one toward the other, every one had two, which covered on this side, and every one had two, which covered on that side, their bodies. 24. And when they went, I heard the noise of their wings, like the noise of great waters. See, for example, the Dead Sea Scroll, in English, 2nd edition, Gverms, p. 211, the throne. Chariot Merkaba was a central subject of meditation in ancient, as well as in medieval Jewish esotericism and mysticism, and the essential Talmud. Adin Steinsaltz p. 213, the sources state that Torah Hasod, mysticism, was divided into two parts: Maseh Bereshit, act of creation, and Maseh Merkava, divine chariot. The former was more theoretical and dealt with the creation of the world and the first divine revelation. Maseh Merkava, based on the prophet Ezekiel's description of the divine chariot, is a study of the prevailing relations between God and the world, and apparently contained the seeds of what later came to be known as Kabbalah Masit, Practical Kabbalah. C. Zechariah Sitchin, The 12th Planet, The First Book of the Earth Chronicles, Reissue Edition, December 1983, Avon, ISBN 038 times, paperback, or reprint edition, June 1990, Ek, Bear & Co., ISBN 893939328882, hardcover. Source